on to a discussion about what's happening at the Supreme Court today as we give you this live picture here. Not seeing the protesters that we did earlier today, but we certainly saw quite a few people who were gathered outside of those walls there, who were all gathered to address this issue of transgender students in sports, and starting to hear how the Supreme Court could be leaning in this case. Meanwhile, the Center on Halsted is going to be the site of an important discussion. This is coming up. It's going to be hosted by Trans Up Front and the Chicago Therapy Collective. And I want to bring in Asher McMayer to talk a little bit about what they're doing and how they're working to inform people better. Asher is the founder and executive director of Trans Up Front Illinois. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to just start off by getting your reaction to what we were seeing at the Supreme Court today, with people gathering outside, starting to hear how the Supreme Court is leaning on this case.
You know, we want to keep our hopes high. I think it's great that we've had so much support. I am very lucky to be on the National Committee for SCOTUS response for this case for Hecox PBJ. And we haven't had great luck with SCOTUS in the past year, but we want to continue to move forward and support our trans students and all of their needs and make sure that they are truly included throughout their education and with their peers.
Yeah, when you speak of supporting trans students, give me your interaction, what you're hearing from students who are caught up in this. I mean, this is a discussion that's gone way above their heads, but does directly affect them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we look at the Supreme Court case, there are actually two cases being heard, right? We have West Virginia versus PBJ, which is about a girl named Becky, who is a middle schooler who just wanted to try out for sports, right? And be part of a team, do something that she loves. We know that physical education, we know that having community goes a long way for any youth, especially a youth of a marginalized identity. And then, of course, we have Little v. Hecox, which, again, is another case of a kid who just wants to be part of a team. We're seeing it here in Illinois as well. As we support our youth, we want to make sure that we are really viewing each child as who they are, what they enjoy. Most of these kids, we're not talking about kids who are going to the national whatever it is, right? These are kids who just want to play on their school's team or play on a club team or do something for fun. The number of trans athletes is very minimal in this in our country. And, you know, there are so many aspects about trans people that I think are really being left out in the conversation as we talk about things like HRT. I was able to listen to oral arguments today, and a lot of it was really based on that biology part, people arguing, well, testosterone. Well, a lot of these kids, they are on HRT. They have very low testosterone, as low as a cis female. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this case.
Yeah, I mean, there is that discussion. You brought up club versus the scholastic sports, and it does become a different type of issue when you're talking about scholarships being on the line or something of that sort. How do you see that? How do you weigh that aspect of it?
I think that it's a case by case basis. In a majority of cases, when we're talking about trans athletes, we're talking about middle schoolers who want to be on their school's volleyball team or a high schooler who wants to run cross country. Yes, they may be going for scholarships, and schools all have their different regulations. And even with the Olympics, it has their different regulations as it pertains to your hormone levels. And one of the topics that came up today in oral arguments is, what does that look like? Is hormone levels enough are there other advantages or disadvantages to a trans athlete? But I feel like at the end of the day, when we're looking at the legal issues, which is this discrimination on the basis of Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause? And we know based on our Constitution that discrimination on the basis of gender identity is not allowed. And so I'm really interested to see how all of this pans out. I'll be the first to say I've been working with trans youth for 10 years. I joke and I call, sports ball. I'm not a sports person. And I'm learning along the way as it pertains to the sports side of things. But, when we're talking about a demographic that has such a high rate of mental health, suicide ideation, those type of things, allowing kids to play, to be part of a team, to be excited about going to school, about having challenge, they're just kids wanting to be kids, just like anyone else.
I remember watching, I think it was last season. So I ran track all my life. And I remember watching a state track meet in California that became very controversial. There was an athlete who was participating, a transgender athlete who was participating, and there was more of listening to the parents of some of the girls who may place second or third, and maybe they would place first before, but then also listening to the story of this trans athlete who just wants to find somewhere to belong. Very difficult.
It is. It's so difficult. And we're talking about athletes like this, right? They are putting in just as much work as everyone else, if not more. I mean, they are putting their body through hormones and so much to be who they are, to feel comfortable in their skin, to find that outlet that brings them joy. Could another person, a cisgender girl, place second? Could they have always placed second? Could there have been another girl who, until you start doing blood work, is really intersex and has more testosterone? I mean, not every person is identical. There are cis people who have naturally high level of testosterone. So are we going to have it that every person has to do blood work in order to play? How are we going to look at this from a true equality and equity standpoint?
So tell me about the conversation that you all are getting ready to have and the information that people need to know if they want to be a part of it.
Yeah, so tonight, doors open at 6:00 at Center on Halsted. It's a free event. We're going to be having a panel. That panel is going to feature a mental health provider, a parent of a trans athlete. We actually have a student athlete as well. Myself and several other leader of a trans sports organization. And we're going to just talk about what's going on in the world. I think right now, more than ever, it's important to stay up to date on what's happening in the Supreme Court and in all levels of our legislative process, because our community is so targeted and under attack that we want to make sure that we're staying informed. And unfortunately, at the Supreme Court level, it's not like these cases outline what they are, right? You hear Cox PBJ and you're like, what did you just say? And so half the battle for us when we're talking about SCOTUS cases is education, is understanding what the potential outcomes are. In this case, we're talking about the potential elimination of gender identity from Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause, which would be devastating, not just within sports, just across the board for trans people. And so we want to make sure the community stays aware. And then, of course, after that conversation, we're having a community dinner with all sports related foods, all the foods you get at the stadium, right? Your burgers, your hot dogs, etc. And coming together as a community to have great conversation, to be with each other, and just enjoy a night knowing that we're going to have to wait another 6 months to find out the decision.
And that's the big part of it, that the decision is not coming today. Even though the discussion was happening today, the decision is still a ways off. Let me ask you this. What are your other areas of concern moving forward outside of this major issue that's being taken up by the Supreme Court right now?
I think right now, as it pertains to trans youth, they're being attacked from all sides. And at Trans Upfront, that's what we do. We work with trans youth at a state level. And so we try so hard to make sure that each kid grows up to be the incredible trans adult they're supposed to be, whether it's, playing with their friends at sports, going to school, and just being able to be who they are every day and get an education, getting access to medical care, really just showing up for these youth. That way they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to grow up, and this is going to be a distant memory as we continue to affirm them and who they are.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And again, everyone, the decision is still far off as to how the Supreme Court will weigh in on this. But today, the Supreme Court did appear to be sympathetic to state bans on transgender girls competing on female sports teams. We'll see what ultimately becomes their decision on the record.
Thanks for watching Fox 32 Chicago. Subscribe now for the stories that matter and never miss what's next.